I'm Amanda Russell, and I'm going to talk to you today about a way that you can work on metaphor. Nobody really taught me how to do this, but I've seen it in my reading, and I sort of explained it to myself in this way, and so maybe it'll help some other people out there. I call it the crossroads method, like Robert Johnson, only you don't have to sell your soul for it. And if you don't know that story, you can look it up. And so let's get started. I'm just going to read some examples. And basically, what you're looking for is the intersection of two different things. And that's where your metaphor is going to start and then maybe even extend from there into something really cool. So I'm going to read from my book, Processing, and we're going to start with the poem Admit One. Sitting on top of the coffee table, he zips his train around him again. His arm dangling down makes him the hinge of his world. If he stops, everything stops. But he never stops. And there is no station, no passengers admitted, no schedule of arrivals he's adhered to. I stand in the kitchen, holding a developmental checklist. Empty boxes mark every train we've missed. So in this poem, um, so I started out with the image of a child playing with a train. And so I had the train. I didn't know when I started like what I was going to do with it. Um, but I truly was standing in the kitchen with the developmental checklist and unable to check off some of the boxes, and I was worried and about my son. And so, you know, I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't know what I was going to be able to do with that. But I think, the train carried me to the idea of a station, passengers, the schedule of arrivals, and there's the developmental checklist right there. So that's the intersection I think that allows me to get from the idea of a kid playing with a train um, and this pretend world to then like the parent able to convey the source of the worry, um, the emotion of the poem, the empty boxes. This next one example I'm going to read is called, so that's an example of where you can like take an image and then see where it leads you, how you can intersect and what about this one thing intersects with the other thing that's going on and what can you do with it, right? So then this next example is one that does a similar thing, but it was more informed by research rather than something I already knew. So this one is called Last I Saw You for a poet friend. Between my Diet Pepsi and your Japanese food, we leaned closer to keep our words from being swallowed by guitar solos. The top of your hair barely brushed the side of mine, and when the waiter asked, you added a request for kimchi sauce. Now, there's a recipe for bridging absence to meet need, a recipe for holding on, though earth turns her head away from the sight of the sun. Pickling is one way to keep the unkeepable. But there was no time left to talk about that, nor did we discuss what distance does because we sat in the M dash of June. Because for this minute we were together, despite what's to come. A swan song, you called it. I didn't know what that was. So in this poem, I actually did a lot of research on kimchi sauce and how's it made and uh, where it came from and everything. And that sort of led me to where this poem went. So when you get to the fourth stanza, now there's a recipe for bridging absence to meet need, a recipe for holding on, though earth turns her head away from the side of the sun. Pickling is one way to keep the unkeepable. So kimchi sauce is pickled, and it is made to prevent starving during the winter months, as most canned products would do, to preserve it. And here we're talking about a friendship, preserving a friendship across distance. And so the other thing that hit me later about this, sometimes, your poems kind of teach you things too, is the way that the recipe could also be the asking, just asking when you need something, instead of just, you know, sitting around, oh, I wish my friend would call me or whatever, like reaching out, asking for the things that you need in your life, and how that can also be a recipe for bridging absence to meet need. So learning about the kimchi sauce enabled me to see where those things met in the middle, and where I could talk about the winter as a distance and what can go through it and preserve the friendships. All right, in this third example, lessons learned by trial or error. When we said I do, I didn't know you'd be away every day. Never agreed to be poured out and refilled with another person. When the nurse said newborns tend to cough in the night, she failed to say, and turn blue. I see you off to grad school each morning, then watch our daughter's life inch forward. But this living room is too small. My ambitions are responsible for the cracks in these walls. I know well, sorry, I know too well how an apple turns into a core of itself to drop its seeds. And not only because that's the image on her favorite page of the book she always picks to read. While she looks at that core, I whisper in her ear, there's a star inside. You see it when the apple is split just right. So for this poem, I rewrote it so many times. I revised this poem like over 60 times, trying to get it right. And this poem really, I think, is where maybe I started to learn about this, because I didn't know how I was going to end it. Like I got to the apple, I got the idea of the core, about how like motherhood feels like a cage sometimes, like your world got smaller, you're at the core of it, the tiny space, and the rest of the apple is missing, gone, irrelevant. And so I got to the core of itself to drop its seeds, and so to be a mother. But then I got to the book, and my daughter really did love this book, and was before and after, like before you eat the apple, it looks like a whole apple, after it's the core. So before and after book. And then when I remembered about when you slice an apple through, horizontally through, how it's got the star in there, that's where I was like, okay, so that's something like that not only a mom could teach a daughter, but also like in a person, we have that capacity, that magic within us, that star within us that we need to grow. Like, so a mother teaching her daughter that she has potential that she can't even imagine yet, but also the mother telling the daughter that there's more to me than, anybody's seeing right now. There's a star inside, and when things are right, we'll see it, and things will shine. And then how that's true for every person. um, when they meet their moment in their conditions. So I hope that you guys can play with your metaphors, use this idea of an intersection, finding where something intersects and then carrying it through. So I mentioned seeing this in other people's work and kind of learning it from that, from reading. And so I'll mention a few examples. One marvelous example is in Ted Kooser's work, his poem Carrying Paul. It is on the internet. It was published in Rattle magazine. It's a fantastic example of this, and he's a master at this. And so you can definitely look to him and his work for examples of this. You can see it also in Henry Cole in his work. Specifically, I'm thinking about the poem Shrike. It's Shrike, Shrike. It's a type of bird. And so that poem is also online. And then also the other one I'm thinking of right now is in What the Living Do by Marie Howe. There's a poem called The Copper Beech, as in a beech tree, Beech. And I think this one also has it marvelously. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this little chat on metaphor, and check out my book if you'd like to. It's available at Main Street Rag. Processing by Amanda Russell. I'll see y'all later. Happy writing.